Two states, but far apart. Finally, a proposal that doesn't ask for major sacrifices, but seeks to maximize benefits for everyone. In the previous video, we said that our two states far apart solution involved two auctions. The first step is for the oil-wealthy Arab states, or even just one of them, to set up a pot, a financial commitment, to fund the creation and initial development of New Palestine. The auction is to see who can contribute the most, and thereby earn the most prestige and influence. We're talking many billions of dollars. Arbitrarily, let's say 200 billion US dollars. That's 2 years' worth of construction spending in the entirety of Dubai. With 6 million population in the metro area, a little more than the number of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Why should any country do this? Is it even rational? First, all that oil wealth, from Saudi Arabia to Kuwait to the Emirates, can in almost every case be traced to arbitrary decisions by colonial powers, the same ones that created the Palestine problem in the first place. The wealth was a gift from divine providence. Giving 5 to 10% back seems only fair, especially for those who hope to remain in the good graces of their supreme being. Second, the oil-wealthy states are already spending hundreds of billions. In an attempt to win the world's admiration, Qatar spent over $200 billion. That's billion with a B. To host the FIFA Games in 2022. Until cooler heads prevailed, Saudi Arabia was on the verge of spending $1.5 trillion. That's trillion with a T, on a whimsical linear city to nowhere. Surely some of these states can chip in serious money to solve the Palestine problem in order to really merit world admiration. Finally, whatever it costs to build New Palestine, that cost will be cheap, compared to what it will cost if Iran succeeds in its efforts to destabilize the Arabs and assume leadership of the Islamic world. Our proposal also involves a kind of auction, in respect of who will provide the land for an independent, sovereign, New Palestine. Let's target 10,000 square kilometers, which, if all 5 million Palestinians from Palestine wound up there, would mean a population density about equal to Israel's, and 10 times better than Gaza's. There are several prospects for land purchase or donation. Whoever says yes first will get the deal, which is territory in exchange for prestige and possibly serious money. First up is Saudi Arabia, which has 2 million square kilometers of territory, and might be willing to donate a tiny parcel on its Red Sea coast, with which to create a sovereign New Palestine. If Saudi Arabia were willing to do this, problem solved. It would earn the admiration of the entire world and achieve more benefit for humanity than all the money it's spending on its other prestige projects. But what if the Saudis have philosophical issues with parting with any land at all? No sweat. Next up, or Plan B, is Egypt. Egypt has $165 billion in foreign debt and has already spent about $50 billion to build a new capital city. Its economic prospects are not bright at the moment. Previous peace deals asked Egypt to allow refugee camps for free in the northern Sinai, but it of course refused. Now what if Egypt were offered hard cash for land? Land that would become the sovereign state of New Palestine, not in the northern Sinai, which is right beside Israel, but a small corner in the southwestern Sinai, which is separated from Israel by desert and mountain, and that Egypt has not had much use for? If you were in charge, wouldn't you consider the prospect? By the way, how much should 10,000 square kilometers cost? The average cost of agricultural land in the European Union is about €10,000 per hectare. In ballpark numbers, that works out to 1 million per square kilometer, or $10 billion for 10,000 square kilometers. Hard bargaining could raise the price, but 10 billion is at least a point of reference. Heck, if the wealthy Arabs won't step up, Mackenzie Scott or Elon Musk could provide the money and earn a probable Nobel Peace Prize. If Egypt can't decide fast enough, we move on to Plan C. 10,000 square kilometers in Jordan's northeastern protrusion, Jordan got this entire protrusion for free back in the 1920s because the British wanted to run an oil pipeline through it. The pipeline closed in 1948, and the whole area hasn't been used much since. Might Jordan give up 1/3 of the protrusion in exchange for a few billions in cash, plus the appreciation of the whole world? If you were in charge, wouldn't you jump at the prospect? Finally, if Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan all sit on the fence or demand too much, there are 6 more Arab ethnic countries in North Africa: Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, Western Sahara, Sudan. Some of these are more plausible than others, and each involves unique issues. But the chances are good that somewhere out there, a viable land deal for New Palestine awaits. Next item on the agenda: organizing the nitty-gritty interim details. This will admittedly be a logistical nightmare, but it is doable. First, a ceasefire, which is now justified by the prospect of a real solution, with demonstrable benefits to almost everyone concerned. Then, immediate humanitarian relief, including emergency housing. At the same time, a census conducted by international peacekeepers to identify and locate every Palestinian and work toward a balanced schedule of migration. For those Palestinians who prefer to stay in Gaza or the West Bank, there must be adequate assurances against bullying by Jewish settlers. For those who wish to leave, an organized system of compensation for property left behind or destroyed by the recent war. Next task: build a country from scratch. Is it even possible? Sure it is. For decades, Chinese developers have built the equivalent of new countries in greenfield locations, and luckily, Chinese construction is in the doldrums right now, desperate for alternative projects to undertake. Less desperate: American, Japanese, and European developers and major engineering firms are also on the lookout for major projects. Building a country isn't just bricks and mortar. Here's where the experts will be useful. Experts in education, healthcare, municipal management, public services, and many other disciplines. We will also need transition provisions and organization, a constitution, and a system of laws. The Arab states that are funding New Palestine must have a serious say on this. But they would be well advised not to engage egghead Harvard constitutional scholars who never had to manage a city or defend a nuisance lawsuit, and equally to avoid religious extremism. Most potential lenders and investors have no appetite for a war-torn Gaza or the West Bank, but once the ball is rolling on New Palestine somewhere else, many will seek to participate in a project with real chances of success, and that captures the attention of the whole world. Bankers, tech companies, science researchers, and possibly manufacturers may well be interested in New Palestine. It could become something like a global potluck, block party for peace. And this idea of neighborhood cooperation, which Filipinos call bayanihan, is another reason the non-zero-sum solution had to come from the other side of the world. Of all the nations on Earth, we are the ones who can most easily imagine the entire world as our neighborhood. One neighborhood of mankind. Where others see constraints, we Filipinos see possibilities. In a two-states but far apart solution, Israel would have a 90% win, its sole concession being world sympathy. The Palestinians would also have a 90% win: living space, new infrastructure and buildings, and a sovereign New Palestine. Just not inside the original Palestine. The Arab world would get a 100% win. For a change, instead of posturing as victims, they would take the lead in an endeavor that captures the world's imagination, and at the same time, derails Iranian leaders' long-range ambitions. This, in turn, might benefit the people of Iran. The US and other Western powers would get a 100% win, too. Vietnam War protests toppled a US president and his party. This war is threatening to splinter the moderate centrist elements of many Western electorates. and could lead to isolationist rightists gaining power by an accidental plurality. The US and Western powers need a solution, which walks a fine line between humanitarian concern and loyalty to longtime allies. The two states but far apart proposal adroitly delivers on both and leaves the US and Western powers better positioned to face geopolitical challenges in Ukraine, Taiwan, and, coming soon to theaters everywhere, Africa. Unlike the every man for himself philosophy of certain narcissistic breastbeaters, that's the real art of the deal. And a genuine win-win. Win-win for Israel, Palestine, the Arab world, and the US and Western powers. The two-state side-by-side solution is supported by almost all the countries on Earth. All of them are wrong. Two states side-by-side is not a solution at all. As a plan, it wouldn't stand up to even the most superficial scrutiny. And it is in fact a blueprint for never-ending turmoil. For 75 years, Palestine peace plans have been concocted by statespersons who can't see the obvious, and who ask both sides for major compromises against self-interest. Many of them will object to my two states but far apart solution, with specious logic and distorted or irrelevant facts. But the fact that they cannot distort is that all their past solutions have been unmitigated, unadulterated long-term failures. Meanwhile, their present two-state solution is simply naive, not to say very, very stupid. Time for the non-zero-sum solution to end the Palestine crisis. Two states, but far apart.